Welcome to episode 53 of the Sports Geek podcast. In this week's podcast, I catch up with Troy Kirby from the Tower of Sports podcast to chat about sports business, ticketing, and of course, podcasting. And also, why is Vine in the crosshairs of ESPN and FIFA?
Welcome to the Sports Geek podcast, the podcast built for the sports digital marketer. And now, here's your host who loves working with teams around the world who need sleep, Sean Callanan.
Thanks, DJ Joel. My name is Sean Callanan from Sports Geek, and you are listening to the Sports Geek podcast. You're either doing that on iTunes, SoundCloud, or Stitcher, or even doing it at sportsgeekhq.com. Thanks again for joining me. Today's show, I catch up with a good mate of mine, Troy Kirby from the Tower of Sports podcast. He was recently in Australia and was lucky enough to stop by for lunch and drop into the Sports Geek office, and we did dueling podcasts. I was on his podcast and he was on my podcast, so you'll get double Sports Geek, Sports Tower goodness this week in your ears. Also, later in the show, I chat with Al Crombie on ABC Grandstand about Vine and how it's in the crosshairs of ESPN and FIFA over digital rights and people stealing content and where that topic might take the industry. Also, other things, we're getting ready for Seat. Not far away now. I leave next week. Well done to Christine. Over 750 attendees. I'll talk a little bit more about Seat later, but here's my chat with Troy Kirby from the Tower of Sports. Here we are at Sports Geek HQ doing a podcast with one of the key podcasts luminaries in the space. So I'm going to bring out luminaries. Troy Kirby, welcome to Australia.
Well, first of all, thank you very much. And I do want to say that I have never met so many very friendly people as in one space and time as in Melbourne. So, Melbourne.
Okay. Melbourne.
Okay,
yeah.
Melbourne.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. But I have to tell you that, like, I went downtown, and if I were in an American city, I had asked, hey, where do I get back to the Melbourne cricket grounds? They would not have told me. You know what I mean? Those types of things. Everybody was very nice. Sure, your movies cost $21, which shocked me, but I can wait to see Transformers. But other than that, been great.
I'm going to the movies tonight, and okay. Yeah, I'm going to pay $21
to see Transformers.
Probably not. I know that's already going to be bad, and I'm not ready to give Michael Bay that kind of money.
Oh, I feel that I've already had my soul ripped out from him 3 times. He might as well take it another.
Pretty much. So here you are in the Sports Geek office or cave with all the jerseys and everything. I just wanted to, I guess we've had a chat on your podcast. I wanted to return the favour. First of all, I wanted to get a bit background on what's your sports business story. What do you do now? What's your current role? And sort of how have you got there? And then we'll get into the podcasting stuff.
First of all, I do want to say that I've been meaning to come on your podcast. I seem really good at coming on, having people come on mine, and then never returning the favor. So I do want to apologize because kept making, I'll do it, yeah, whatever, and then it never happened. So
no, I'd much rather do it in person. So,
okay.
Yeah.
Well, but anyway, what I will say is the impetus of sports business in general for me was, I've worked in 10 years for college or, for a minor league soccer team, various stuff. But until about 2012, I really didn't understand what I could do with it beyond just working as an employee. I was selling tickets, I was doing other things, and I can get into that in a second. But what I do have to say is the person that you have to thank for me putting out the podcast originally is the Octomom.
The Octomom.
The Octomom, because I was toying around with a podcast that my friend had. It was he did one called the Nothing Cast, and it was a little part of it. So we had the chance to interview the Octomom. So
is this still on the internet? Can we get links to this?
I might have a copy of it somewhere. I think he took it down, but it was interesting, and it was classy, whatever. Yeah. But I think at one point he said, "I really love your work." But the point is that it was weird because I was thinking I could be interviewing and talking to people within my industry and really getting all this stuff. I have nothing against the Octomom, but I was going, if she's willing to come on, I think I can get my friends to come on. And when I just moved down to California from Eastern Washington University, so I was thinking of new stuff to do. I had more than enough, time in certain areas, and I thought, why not do this? I had Matt Harper, who was one of my best friends in the world, who was leaving his job and going up to move to Oregon.
Yep.
So he was coming through, and I said, let's just tape one. Let's see what happens. So I taped it, put it on the internet, because of course I'm an idiot. And,
Yep.
you know, how dare you do that? Kevin Miller at the University of West Virginia reached out and said, I really enjoyed that. I hope you do more. And it was like, it really caught me at the right time. So I said, who else do I know? I know Rob Sine, who's the VP of tickets at the
Yep.
Pac-12. I'll talk to him. Sure, fine. I don't know the difference. You know, there are a few other people, and it just kept catching on. And I only did one a week. And then, of course, I was crazy, so I did 2 a week and 3 a week. And
Yeah,
then
putting us other podcasts is a shame.
you know what really caught me was that first 2013 going to spring training, because
Yep.
I'd never been to spring training in Arizona, and I walked through, and it was like I never had to pay for a ticket, which of course is the antithesis of my whole thing.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
because I knew all the people there, and they all wanted to be on the podcast, and I was doing 6 a day. I was literally, somebody goes, hey, do this one. Hey, do this person. I need to make a call. You need to talk to this person. Okay, fine. So, and I had a blast for like a week. And I was like, wow, this is really cool. So it's like, and more opportunities come from that. And what I would say is, anybody who's out there who's listening to these types of things, who are going, yeah, but that's great. You did 350 of them, but I can't do that. You know what? Yeah, you can. And it's never been done, you know? So, and I always feel fortunate. I think there are way too many people that like to, you know, complain about their lot in life. I shouldn't even be walking right now. I broke my neck when I was 6 years old, paralyzed from the neck down. I was told I wasn't going to walk again. I did. The point was, you get up and you walk. So, you know, but that's I guess where I would call the difference is, you know, too many people are willing to live in that kind of, you know, mediocrity. What you do,
Yep.
I'm sure that there is enough time that you could sit on your laptop and look at YouTube videos.
Oh, there are days that I do.
But you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, I do, yeah.
Instead of doing that, you do your own stuff. The amount of people that are willing to convince you not to do your own stuff are tantamount, because they say, wow, there's no money in it, there's no whatever. You gotta hustle
Yep.
at all times. So I think this has been a great prover to me to hustle. I wouldn't be in Melbourne today, or Melbourne,
Yep.
if it weren't for the podcast. I wouldn't be in various places. I've traveled the state of Florida twice, you know, Arizona, doing podcasts, doing other things. Wouldn't have had those opportunities.
So one thing I did want to talk to you about is, I guess, the whole your area of expertise. So before you're a podcaster, you're in ticket sales and sales strategies. As I've spoken with several guys on the podcast before, like Chris Seppenfeld from the Bobcats, the Hornets now. They've been there. Teal is back. About ticket selling and how it's different, how it's completely different philosophy in the US to Australia. Do you want to give us a little bit of background of one, you know, that ticket sales strategy more so than the podcasting stuff?
Here's what I'll say is that I just talked to the Melbourne Storm,
Yep.
Melbourne, and they were very nice. But a lot of times they were they were kind of, you know, trying to figure out what I was saying. And I was like, look, I'll walk you through kind of the process, and as I'll do here. You're talking about those lifelong commitments, those memberships, and that's a huge part of it.
Yep.
That's a marriage.
Yep.
But you can't ask somebody the first time they meet you to marry you. But you also want to make sure that it's more than a one-off. It can't just be a single date.
Yep.
So you've got to keep working towards the next date and doing those things. That's what ticket sales can be. The problem is that we have so many people that involve it as either a rip and tear, or they don't understand that tickets are the greatest ROI of any product you've ever had.
So take us through take us through some of those terms for people who are listening.
Okay,
that aren't
rip
in
and
it.
tear means that somebody just shows up, you rip it. You're not developing a relationship with them. Sean, if you come to my event, I want to develop a relationship with you to where you go, wow, that's a person I want to know. If I have a problem, I'm going to help. He's going to facilitate a lot of the things that I need. And here's kind of where I started to learn more about ticket sales was, you know, I'd worked for one organization, Spokane Shadow. We did professional soccer, and they did pretty well at ticket sales, but I only understood it from the point of calling people and going, hey, do you want to buy tickets, etc. It wasn't really understood. And then what happened was I worked at Seattle University, and it was their GA,
Yep.
That's a graduate assistant.
Yep.
And I had gone there, and our basketball team was horrible. We had 17 people the last game of the season when I first started. It's literally, parents didn't even show up. So I get there and we're sitting down, and the guy that's supposed to call these people is the events guy, and he goes, "I'm not answering the phone." I don't know how you get to choose out or opt out of things, but apparently you do. And I said, "Well, I'll call." And they said, "Well, that's $200 to pay for a phone." I said, "You know what? I'll give you the $200 if I don't actually sell it." And they said, "We've only had one season ticket every year out of the entire building." I was like, "Wow, one season ticket. This is horrible basketball." But what ended up happening was they put my money where my mouth was. I went forward and I sold $3,200 that first year. But that was because I also sought out information. I realized I did not know it all. Yep. I went through Rob Cornelis, who is Game Face.
Okay, yep.
I don't know if you're familiar with him. If you look on some of my old podcasts, I did an interview with him, but he was really helpful in the fact that he did sales training, but he also didn't treat us like the slimy sales people, Wolf of Wall Street. That to me is something that I'd like to preface, because there are some people that may go, "Oh, come on, this is that slimy. I want to sell you." I want to sell you aluminum siding.
Yeah, the whole salesman, the used car salesman.
And as I was telling some other people, that's not what you're here for. You don't want to sell them on the maximum thing every time. What I want to do is find out exactly what you're using it for, because what I don't want is for you to pull out that drawer of tickets at the end of the year and go, "What exactly did I invest in?" It's the same with Apple. It's the same with Harley Davidson. It's the same with all those great brands that you talk about. At the end of the day, they want you to be happy with their product. I liken it to, Apple has the option for you to have the big mega laptop, the huge one.
Yep.
But if you're traveling a lot and your needs are that you need a Mac Air that goes in that little small space so you can type during every single plane trip,
yep,
it's not going to help them long term. And that long term vision is something we lack sometimes in sports. But honestly, that's what we should be selling them on. We should be selling them on the right product, because otherwise they come back to us and go, "I'm never buying from you again," and I'm telling 10 other people.
Yeah, and that's critical. And I think one of the things with sports, and in Australia, it is very much focused on membership, on the membership side of things. And when I was chatting with Shane Harmon from Westpac Stadium, he really fires on that. Membership is an emotional decision, which really, fits along lines with your, marriage analogy. You want to start that relationship, and that's what you're selling, the relationship. You're not selling the ticket itself or the 12 tickets because it's a season ticket pack. It's you're trying to build on that relationship, and that's something that it sort of takes away that used car salesman sort of aspect to it.
Well, and that's the thing is, when you hear season ticket and you see that the San Diego Padres or the Phoenix Suns have said, "Well, we're doing memberships." No, you're not. You're rebranding the name season ticket. You're trying.
Yep.
And I'm not saying that that's necessarily bad, and I've interviewed some of them. They're great guys. They're trying, great women too. I mean, they're trying various things. I don't say that there's anything thinking outside the box that's a bad thing. But at the same time, it's a legacy buy. It's an emotional buy. The only criticisms I've ever had of memberships is sometimes they go all or nothing. And when they do re-up every year, they should have something different. If I'm a 29-year member and you're a 7-year or a first year, you should not be getting the same stuff. That we should be having that argument. I know you're a Collinwood guy. Yeah. That's your big thing. If you're there for 40 years, we should be making sure that you understand how important that is, as a person that has been a shareholder in that, and really a legacy for the long term, longer than anybody else. And I'm not saying everybody doesn't do that. I'm just saying that those are the things that I would look at and say, they can be improved. The one problem I've got, and I mentioned that, and this was something Mark Tamar at the Seattle Seahawks mentioned, and a few other people when we were talking, is this whole 7 years behind nonsense that they've been feeding, Australian sport or international. Well, you're 7 years behind the pros. Really? What's funny is 350 episodes, I've interviewed quite a few people, and I have to tell you, there are some people in the U.S. that are far behind you guys.
Yeah, I mean, I don't subscribe to that theory. I do like, and I like to say that Melbourne's the sporting capital of the world, in the fact that we have a ridiculous amount of teams, and we really are, for a population of a bit over 3.5 million, to have 10 football teams in the Grand Slam, tennis and the Grand Prix, and we've got our version of the Kentucky Derby. So it's a really great place to ply your trade from a ticket selling and sponsorship point of view, because it is blood from a stone type of stuff. So you do have to get really inventive. I think where the difference lies potentially from an Australian-US market point of view is potentially in a sophistication around the data and the CRM side of things, and also, I guess, experimental budget around marketing and game day type of things. So there might be, from a US point of view, they might have a little bit more spend in that space to go, we're going to try this, whereas there's not as much experimentation type budget, whereas they sort of want to follow the lead of someone else. And so that's where some of that mentality to a certain degree comes from. But as far as, how they go about using social or how they engage fans or getting people to walk up and turn up to games and, crowd numbers and those kind of things, it can be right alongside and in some cases in front of. So,
and that's one thing that I would like to say is, first of all, I don't just use internal information or it just has to be specific to sports. I'm a big person as far as history and looking at other things. Thomas Friedman has a saying, it's called cursed by oil, and this is the problem that the United States sporting scene has a lot of times. Cursed by oil talks about the Middle East, and it says the problem is they don't innovate because of the fact they don't have to. They're always going to get that abundance. And until 2008, we always had people that bought suites. We always had people that bought tickets. They were buying on credit, but we didn't care. But the problem is we weren't like the Japanese, and the Japanese are not cursed by oil because they have no natural resources, so they have to innovate consistently. And the problem is, in 2008, everybody freaked out, especially in the United States, and especially with universities and colleges. Athletic departments internationally are not the same as they are for the United States. But a lot of them had been able to cover budgets. A lot of them had been able to, hit huge sales numbers without having to actually earn it. And now we're in the space to where we actually have to earn it. So some of our problems that we talk about with sports business are that we've told each other that we are the perfect, we are the epitome. Yep. So there is no problem with what we do. And now we're finding out that's not only necessarily true, but we're not even living up to the numbers and standards we used to, because of the fact we forgot to learn. And that's where I think this is all changing. And I think the international sports scene has the opinion and the option of actually moving ahead of the one in the United States, because it's great to have a virtual cash machine, but not when the suite sales are starting to crush. And the suite sales are starting to drop like flies, as they have been the last 4 years. I would challenge anybody to actually look at suite sales over the last 4 years for the United States. They're called an aging dinosaur now for a reason. There's a reason. Nobody's buying into them. They haven't fit the needs. And if you look at the suites that are over here and the overseas, they're filled because they understand those needs and they understand what it takes to actually get people to buy in.
Well, that's the thing. As much as there's, concern and everything said, there's also tremendous opportunity for the people putting in the hard work and putting in those extra effort to not that, we've got a great team, people will keep showing up. So, using the new technology that's available around CRM and, understanding your fan and understanding what offer that fan will get, not the thank you for coming on board, please marry me, take him along that escalator, give him that 1 game offer, that 3 game offer, that kind of thing. And using things like we're starting to do with the Facebook advertising and all the demographics that's now giving sports marketers the opportunity to say, we now know what our fans are like, we know what else they like, we can hit them up with a specific offer. For as much as people complaining about Facebook, there's all this data that it's providing. So for me, it's a huge opportunity for sports to do it right, and to help lead sponsors and partners in that direction as well, because they're in that same space of how do we reach our customer and those kind of things that sports offers, out of the box.
And here's what I'll use as an example, and I know your audience is a little more international, but I would use NASCAR and Formula One as perfect examples where people don't follow necessarily the sport itself, but they follow that person.
Yep.
And your membership is like an affiliated brand to that Collinwood or Hawthorne or whatever, to where you can actually say, I can drive them to this specific sponsor. And if you don't sponsor me, they aren't going to buy your product. And that's how loyal they are. And I think that's where the membership model actually supersedes a lot of the season ticket transactional. Because a lot of times with the season ticket, yeah, great, I bought a season ticket. I may have gone to all the games and may not have. But I don't feel the loyalty in the same way. I don't feel that, I'll give you an example more on the college side, because when Seattle University, we played in 57, 58, we played for the national title of college basketball back when they were the big powerhouse against Kentucky. So we played them back in 2008. So we had extra exhibition tickets. Now we thought exhibition, nobody's going to come beyond a few people. So we had extra ones. So we went outside, and I was part of it. We handed them to Kentucky people. First of all, they didn't know they were going to be able to come, because even with 20,000 seats, they didn't have the ability. But I have to tell you, I had people with tears in their eyes. They'd never even been in the facility. They'd always wanted to be. But the point was, it was such an emotional core. These things teach you something. I mean, they aren't, you have life lessons your entire, go around. You can either accept them or you can not. And the problem is, in sports business, we like to plug our ears and say we know it all. I mean, I guarantee you that right now there's somebody who's an executive who's listening to this going, well, I know it all. I know what you're going to say. I know all this stuff. That's the person that is going to be failing in a year, because they don't understand this world changes. There is so much about Twitter and Facebook and everything else that you have taught me that I thought, okay, I kind of figured it out. That's why I've gone from like 100 followers to about 2,200, because it's really that understanding that you don't know it all, and that you have to continue to understand that everything is going to change as you go along. And that's where the membership model has the ability to really develop those things as a traditional, but they can also, be there and kind of just rest on their laurels too. Because that's a huge component that's actually cost them, is by thinking that people are just going to automatically re-up.
Yeah, it's not a holy grail. It's not a holy grail.
Not at all.
And there's a lot of pieces to the puzzle. And I think that's where it's weaving them all together. Like, it's funny, you're talking about loyalty, and it just, it seems to be the hot buzz thing of everyone setting up loyalty programs around, what you're doing as far as what you're doing on social, and then what you're doing with your ticket spend and turning up to games and spending on merchandise. But something as simple as, years of service, like that's a very easy loyalty model to roll out and reward those fans just to begin with, and not to be chasing that, here's the new thing that's going to be the panacea, when it's going to be a little bit of that, it's going to be a little bit of the reward stuff, it's going to be a little bit of the, delight and surprise your fans with certain things, and then there's going to be, the what still get underestimated is, great customer service or over-servicing and those kind of things. It's a whole picture. And yeah, you're right, we are now at a time, and it's not just podcasts that we're producing, where you can get access to all of that info to, follow how did they do it well in the World Cup, or what are they doing over in London, it's differently for the EPL, and all of those kinds of things. Five years ago, that wasn't available. Like, you would only be getting it via, SBJ, the Sports Business Journal, or a few resources, where it's now opened up, and you can be having that conversation or seeing what people are doing in the UK or in Europe or in Australia. Again, I think Shane made a really good point, that New Zealand is seen as sort of a place that you watch for trends, because things happen there sooner, and that's where big brands keep an eye on what's happening. So what they're seeing with the world of sports and crowds and how they're moving is something that you want to pay attention to, because it will happen in Australia and it will happen in the US. So, and you've got access to all of that stuff. So it's just a matter of finding the right people that you need, to follow to be able to filter that bit of information. But it's all out there. And if you do have that, we're good, our team's good, the old winning is a strategy kind of mentality, which some teams still have. You really want to make sure that you're pulling out every resource you can.
Well, here's the first thing I'll say. Hope is not a strategy.
Yep.
So if you're hoping, you're not going to win. Let me just say this to you. The LA Lakers, the Manchester United, both of them went through horrible years. Remember those dedicated fans over the last 20 years when they've been winning championships? Where were those fans this last year? They dropped out, because once you've sold them only on a proposition of winning, that's all they expect. And when they don't get it, you're suddenly the worst thing possible. So selling to the ultimate fan, you have to realize, A, the ultimate fan is already there, and B, if you're not settling on some of the casual fan, the casual fan will actually become your ultimate fan in ways that the ultimate fan will not, because the casual fan sometimes will not care about your standings. They care about a good time.
Yeah, and that's what we've seen here in Australia with the Big Bash League. Like, that's effectively been, relaunched. It's cricket. It's rather than if we have cricket in various forms, we have it in 5-day format, we have it in 1-day format, maybe the length of a baseball game, and now there's this 2020, which is a nice 3-hour consumable. And it's never been pitched as a game of cricket. It's been pitched as an entertainment option, and more and more sport needs to be pitched in that way. You aren't competing against other sports. You are competing against TV, Netflix, the movies, even
$21 movies.
Even at $21 movies. That's what you're competing against. And in cricket's terms, in the middle of summer, you're competing against the beach, and those kind of things. So it has to be an entertaining option. So more and more sports will be, and they are, whether it's NBA doing a specific theme night with Star Wars or dress ups or whatever. There's another reason you're going, and it might be to bring along those kids to become your next fans and those kind of things. Because not everyone's going to have the motivation to go, I'm super in love with this sport, or I'm super in love with this team, but I want to go for the experience of taking my family to a game and having a great day out. And so it's really, you're selling a completely different sell to what the standard sport will be, which will be, for Barcelona, come and see, Lionel Messi because you love football. So no, I want to go because I want to go and experience a game and see what it provides. So that's the difference. I think there's a lot of change happening in that space as well.
And the interesting thing about that is you bring up that the every competition. I went to the one on Sunday night. Was the Collingwood
Carlton on Sunday night at
Sunday
the MCG.
Night footy, right?
Yeah.
And I'd never been to a football game. It was interesting. I found it funny that somebody made the reference that it's more exciting than the NFL and that they don't understand it because there's too many stoppages. And I said, well, that's kind of a cultural thing. So I can respect that sports are different, and I can respect those types of things. What I cannot handle and I cannot respect is that when you have somebody that gets on the next day, and I happened to be watching because I was up at 4 a.m. because I could not get to sleep because of the time zones. The person got up there and blamed the league when it's his club.
Yep.
This is not the 1970s, and your event is not Gandhi's funeral. Gandhi's funeral, by the way, is the largest walk-up crowd ever. It was 2 million people. So unless it's those types of things, and apparently they knew from December that this thing was going to happen. So if you knew from December, this is kind of like, when did they know? Why did they know?
So for the listeners, Troy's talking about Eddie Maguire, who's the president of the Collingwood Football Club, and a Polish media performer. So he's a TV and radio star. So
he's a Polish media performer who should have been embarrassed.
But
I'm sorry.
I could. Yeah, he was effectively defending. I guess I'm not going to defend Eddie, but he was effectively just pretty much putting his stake in the stand to say we don't want to have these terrible time slots again. Bit of a power play, and the fact that 40,000 turned up when they've averaged 67. It was a combination of bad time slot and those kind of things. But yeah, they could have done more to get more people there, and it was a bit of a deflecting of the blame. I would have thought that Eddie was playing there.
But you don't control the weather.
Yeah.
What if all of a sudden the Premier had died that weekend? What if all of a sudden the freak snowstorm?
Yeah.
What if everything had happened? What if all of a sudden an earthquake had happened? You can't control the outside things around you. So instead, you need to focus on how do we make sure that this game, I guarantee you the Super Bowl, even though it was played in New York and it was played in snow and it was the first open air thing, I guarantee you none of the NFL guys stood around and said, that'll be sold out. They had to sell every single ticket.
Yep.
And that's the point. When the buck stops with you, the buck stops with here. That's where you have to go. And in his case, I'm not saying like he's a horrible person or whatever. Yeah. What I'm saying though is he has to refocus. And the problem is too many people go on the Ultimate Fan and they think everybody's going to show up. Pretend that nobody shows up. tell me how you would fix that if nobody shows up and you're 8 months out, 6 months out. And that's all I'm asking. And I know I'm picking on him.
Yep.
But he was the only one that...
No, I completely understand. Yeah, because it's...
and I don't know him from Adam. Probably a very nice guy. I don't know. But my point is that I saw that and I was like, that isn't... First of all, the worst thing you can do is blame the fans. So I'm going to blame the victim. I'm going to blame the person that could have come out, and then they're going to be told, well, okay, so if I come out and there's not enough of us, then I get blamed?
Yep.
Or I don't come out because my kid's in school, the next day. I get blamed? I mean, to me, it's the antithesis of what you should do. Now, that sounds like something out of the 1970s playbook, but we're not in there anymore unless they check my, calendar again. So I guess those are my kind of criticisms, and I don't want to be too harsh. I get it that it's a sensitive subject, but it's something that really kind of bugs me because that's where people, kind of go, well, you're 7 years behind.
So don't complain. Look at the solution and not complain. I completely agree. To wrap up this chat, one, where can people find you and all of your stuff and podcasts? This is the plugging part of the interview. So your Twitter handle,
SportsTow.
And where can they find your podcast?
Sportstow.com. They can find it on iTunes. They can find it on Spreaker. They can find it on TuneIn. All of them. Stitcher. I've made sure they're on all of them because I always get somebody that emails and says, "Hey, you're not on this platform," and I say, "Okay." Then
are you on the Windows Phone Store?
Yes.
Did you have a real hard time getting it on there?
No, because I use a company called Libsyn that actually makes the app thing for me. And puts
so you've gone down that route of Libsyn with the app, so people can download the app as well.
I'm a very big supporter of what Rob does because I am not a tech guy, which is kind of funny because I'm in the world of tech.
Yeah.
But I just want to be able to put it up, and I will pay the $30 a month so I don't have to think about it. But he got it figured out for me. And what's funny is I've had other people that have reached out to me and said, I had such a problem with iTunes and this, that, and the other. And I said, well, if you talk to Rob or, and look, if there are other things out there, I don't want to seem like he's not paying me any money to do it. I'm paying him. But, it really does. If it makes it easier for you, I would rather farm that out. That's an Americanism, maybe. I don't know.
I mean, my podcasts are on Libsyn as well. But yeah, I have found like iTunes is where most people find you, and that's where a lot of the downloads are. I think there's probably, if we're looking at the podcasting scene, if someone can sort of break that, how to download a podcast. I mean, I'm sure you're still answering that question. How do I download it? What do I do it with?
That's a huge one.
And I mean, it's helped that now iTunes have the podcast app and people can start understanding that. But Android's another space. It's like if someone's an Android, how do I get it? Oh, well, I'll tell people I use Pocket Cast. I love Pocket Cast. That's where I send people.
Yeah, I've got them on Pocket. Yeah. But what I would stress, though, is, and Libsyn doesn't do this, but a lot of those companies out there do, be careful that they're not throttling. Because if they're throttling, what they're doing is stopping you. If you get a certain amount of listeners, then they stop allowing you to have so many things. It's kind of like really bad Wi-Fi.
Yeah.
You don't want it. So just make sure that you're being protected.
All the big podcasts are on Libsyn because it is a pay your fee per month. And if it's
I don't want to think about it,
and if it's popular, it's popular. So there will be links to everything Troy Kirby related, Twitter, LinkedIn, his podcast, all these websites. He's pretty much everywhere. If you've missed him, you're doing it wrong.
Yeah. Ticketingtoday.com as well, which I don't even run. They asked me to be a part of it, and somebody said, "Well, you obviously own that." I go, "No, but I just publish a lot."
You do a lot of articles on that. So there'll be a few links in the show notes. Thank you very much for being on the show, and hopefully we'll catch up with you stateside sometime. I
want to say thank you very much, not only for today because we had lunch and everything, but just your friendship. I really do appreciate the fact you've taught me a lot. I hope that I can return the favor in some way, but I just really want to say that it has been really nice to kind of meet somebody of your caliber who's not only donated the time but just been there. And that's a good thing. So what I would stress is anybody that's looking to, when they talk about that networking stuff, don't just give a stupid card. Just be a friend. That it helps so much more.
All right, we're going to go to a break so Troy and I can hug. Cheers.
Cheers.
Sign up for Sports Geek News at sportsgeekhq.com/sign up now.
Thanks again to Troy Kirby from the Tower of Sports. All the links to all things Troy will be in the show notes. They will be sportsgeekhq.com/53. But check out his work on ticketing today and definitely give his podcast a listen to. This week on ABC Grandstand with Al Crombie, I caught up with him to chat about Vine and where it sits and why it's currently catching a little bit of heat from FIFA and ESPN.
Hi, Sean Callanan joins us in the studio, our resident sports geek from sportsgeekhq.com. Morning, Sean.
Good morning, Al. How you doing?
Well, better than you, because you've got to actually turn around to see the screen. You've got to look at my mug, whereas I'm kind of watching this beautiful game.
I'm 100% committed to this radio program, Al. And I can see the show on the reflection over there, so maybe 85%.
Wonderful. 5 minutes to go. Colombia are pressing pretty hard, and the Brazilians starting to look a little nervous, looking a little bit cagey, but we'll keep one eye on this one. But of course, you're here to talk social media and
all things digital everything that's happening in the world. One of the things that actually is happening around the World Cup, and it's around this, I guess, the sports rights issue around TV rights, and sort of where social media is playing in that space. And so we've spoken about a few of the different platforms that are coming up, and one of them that's causing a bit of furore is Vine. So Vine is an app that was acquired by Twitter and then launched by Twitter, and it's a 6-second video clip. So you can take a 6-second video clip and put it out there. You Vine it effectively by putting it out there, and people can watch it and watch it on a loop. And sports rights holders, especially in the World Cup, are going, well, hang on, we've gone and paid a stack of cash for the TV rights, and we can't, and there's these people stealing our content effectively and sharing it. Now, if it's you or I, they're not that fussed about it. If we want to show our fervour and stuff, or it's even better from an organiser point of view if you're taking a Vine from the stadium or that kind of thing to show the event. But it's when there are several media outlets that don't have the rights and stuff like that. And we spoke about it with Francis around the Olympics, and the Olympics are super clamped down. You can't take an audio clip or a tiny video clip. Like they just have a raft of lawyers ready to just pounce on anybody. But it's sort of becoming looser in this space, and so it's a bit like there are fans saying, "Oh, come on." And at the moment, it's ESPN and FIFA that are sort of chasing down a few media outlets saying, "Hey, stop vining all of the top goals," because like people, wake up, they want to see the goals, and it's a really easy consumable form. And so it's really eating into their both TV and their digital rights. And so, there's a bit of backwards and forwards with the rights holders and Twitter, just, copyright violations and stuff like that. But it is a growing, I guess, area of concern, a growing area of legality. And I guess the best example, just in the last week with Aussie Nick Kyrgios at Wimbledon, everyone would have seen that, between the legs shot.
Yeah, sensational.
And they probably saw it via a Vine. And again, it was a random person that took it off their TV, but then all the media outlets picked it up under, under fair use for news, which is sort of a grey area where sports programs allowed to use content to say we're reporting on the news, and that's where the argument lies. Now that Vine has had 3.6 million views, so Wimbledon would be complaining that, well, you should be going to our site to watch that clip, or we've already monetized it and we've put it up on our YouTube channel because we're the ones with the rights. But people have already gone, oh, well, I've seen it on this Vine. I don't need to see it. So,
well, that's it, isn't it? A lot of people would be sitting home maybe thinking 6 seconds, gee, what's the big deal? But if we think about something like Kyrgios's shot, or say Timmy Cahill's goal, those kind of ones, that's the stuff that people want to see. They're not too worried about the other highlights. They want to see the absolute moment.
And the thing is that also drags in the casual fan and the non-avid fan that's not watching it. And so that's what, all these teams that we work with, or leagues or that kind of thing, want to promote and drive people back to their sites and show the full experience of the game. And if all these premium snippets just end up out on the web, whether they be via Vine. I mean, the other area that is of concern, and there is, I guess, contentious rights issues, is with GIFs. So, animated GIFs. So, an animated GIF is where you can take some vision, for instance, and make it into a picture that just has stills effectively in it. But it effectively ends up looking like a movie. And so there's even rights issues talking about, oh, hang on, there was that big dunk in the NBA and now it's on Tumblr and it's gone completely viral. But it's not, because it's not video, we can't classify it, we can't go after it. But when you're looking at it, and watching it, it looks like video. It shows the representation of it. I can take, Timmy Cahill's goal, make a GIF of it and put it up on Twitter and it'll play, it'll be exactly like, video. So that's the point of contention at the minute. And I think probably future rights, discussions and those kind of things will probably tie those loose ends. So it's because it's a developing space.
Is there any way to actually track or monitor how much, say 3 million people watching this Vine and not going to the official website, how much that'll cost? I mean, because it all comes back to rights and dollars. I mean, can they put a ballpark figure on how much this cost them and hence why they're getting so upset?
Lawyers can put money and dollar figures on a bunch of things. So I think that's the main thing. There's been a few media outlets in the US that have had their Vine accounts sort of shut down because they kept sort of breaching the copyright policy. So they have to build those audiences up. But I think that's where it'll come down to. Someone will say, hang on, you are siphoning off our audience, siphoning off the rights that we've paid. And so it will be a matter of saying we paid $100 million or whatever the amount is for these rights. And then if you're seeing your rights move on. Now, YouTube has technology to detect if you upload game footage or certain things and they can go, oh, hang on, that we know the right holder and automatically either take down or the rights holder has the option to allow that video to stay there, but with their advertising. So there's some of the football teams that do a lot of work through YouTube. So Real Madrid's one of them. They would allow someone to remix Ronaldo goal celebration or whatever, and not say take it down. They would just say that we own the rights to that video, to that content. We will claim that content, but we'll leave it up. But there'll be ads during, after, and throughout, and the money goes back to Real Madrid. So the technology to say, is it allowed, is there. It just needs to be adapted for these new networks. And then potentially that might be a solution where they say, we will let it happen, but there will be a pre and post roll maybe on these kind of videos.
Sean Callanan's with us from sportsgeekhq.com. Shawnee, sports stars have embraced social media, their Twitter accounts, Facebook, obviously to build their profile, to keep in touch with their fans, or to give the illusion of keeping in touch with their fans in some instances. It can backfire on you. Maria Sharapova's had an instance this week where it's backfired pretty heavily.
Oh, yeah, and so if you haven't been following Maria Sharapova, obviously a big tennis star, massive amount of fans, was asked at Wimbledon this week because Sachin Tendulkar was in town, was at the game. I think he was in one of the corporate boxes, and she was asked if she knew who Sachin Tendulkar was, and she said she didn't. And what a crime that is.
Oh, big mistake.
And that effectively annoyed millions upon millions of cricket fans in India who decided to provide her with an education lesson via her Facebook page, via her Twitter. For a short while, her Wikipedia page was updated to say she does not know who Sachin Tendulkar is. So it just shows you the fervour and fandom around Sachin Tendulkar in India. Nothing wrong. You can't expect Maria Sharapova to be across everybody in cricket, but people can be offended at the smallest thing, and I get the power of the crowd. But the amount of
just that direct link.
Oh,
they can go there straight to her.
we are. So I'm pretty sure she definitely knows, and I wouldn't be surprised if I see an Instagram photo of her and Sachin Tendulkar in the near future to appease her new legion of Indian fans.
Check out which teams work with SportsGeek at sportsgeekhq.com/clients.
So where do you think Vine will land in the space of sports digital rights? Really interesting to see that Twitter recently acquired Snappy TV, which is used by a few leagues around the world. The NFL, the NBA, the AFL are using it here. to enable them to put in live clips directly into the stream. So that may be a way for Twitter to appease these rights holders. But I definitely think they're going to have to move along with some technology similar to what the YouTube have to be able to protect the digital rights of the people who buy the rights. Because if they don't, obviously those values, those rights may diminish if everyone just can simply watch the biggest highlight on a Vine. That clock is telling me to wrap up this episode, get out and let you get on with your day. This has been episode 53. You can find the show notes at sportsgeekhq.com/53. All the links to Troy Kirby and all the other things that I mentioned on this podcast will be in that episode. Getting to the pointy end of the World Cup, so my Sounds of the Game and social media post of the week has got a Barcelona flavour, I should say, with Lionel Messi in action for Argentina. I was lucky enough to see him and Neymar in Barcelona, and that's where this Sounds of the Game comes from. And social media post of the week goes out to Lionel Messi, wishing Neymar our best recovery, as we all do.
Please leave a review on iTunes. Go to sportsgeekhq.com/iTunes. Find all Sports Geek podcasts at sportsgeekhq.com/SGP. Need help with your content? Book in for a content brainstorming session with Sports Geek now. Go to sportsgeekhq.com/work. Thanks for listening to the Sports Geek Podcast.